computer. Okay. All right. So this is the Sun Plus. I think that's the brand name.
I think not Sun Plus, it's something else. I forgot what it was. Yeah, it's a good brand. It's kind of nice and quality.
And then here's the one that I used to use. Maybe. Yeah. So that, but it's on. See, it says I moved the monitor to the left. It's now. So that is the Sun Plus. But I'll go back to the. I mean, that's the Asus. I'll go back to the Sun Plus. But it's it's a wider angle, and
yeah,
and I don't have electronic zoom, adapter thingy for this. Although they might exist generically, but I don't know.
Okay, so strange. I still cannot record, but I'll recede into the woodwork.
All righty. Well, it says that I'm recording on my
local
machine. Okay, so where did we leave off at midnight last night, or 9 o'clock your time?
Well, you give me a couple of the links that you want me to dumb down for you and all that stuff. And when I was in my shower this morning, I thought about green egg and ham.
Green eggs and ham. Yeah.
So I asked. So the problem I have is let me send it to you. The problem I have was I just added. Let's see here.
Oh,
this is the problem I have. Can you see my
oh, it's in the chat.
Yeah.
I'm looking to see where you put it. Please rewrite in Dr. Seuss style. That's tricky. That's tricky. Yeah. I was going to show you one that I forgot about from last night. So I can
Oh, Josh.
Hello.
Hello. So did you see that I did 3 of the link that you have sent me?
Let me go back to Messenger.
Yeah.
That would be in your direct.
Yeah, direct. Yeah, just me and you.
Your own direct message.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last one was the Eggman.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is new. This is so you got it into verse.
Yeah, I'm telling you. I would stop until I get what I want. I have a goal.
Yeah, you put it into verse.
The goal is just to catch you up, Josh. The goal is to create something, either cartoon or something that get 10,000 views.
You know how, Josh, how I tend to write for a graduate level, college level audience. So the idea is, can we recruit ChatGPT to dumb it down to middle school or even grammar school level, or fairy tale or children's story level, without losing the content? Because it's kind of tricky to imagine it's college level content, or at least college level language. And how much can you dumb it down without, losing?
Well, first, try to change that word from dumb it down to communicate more clearly, or valuetainment, or entertain. How much more can I entertain?
Yeah.
But the word dumb, I think, is going to throw you off.
That's the issue, because it's one thing to use simpler language to say the same thing. It's another thing to take an abstract ideas, which are defined with abstract terminology, and put them into more concrete terms. About the only thing you can do, I think, is maybe just give an example. You can give a concrete example, a synthetic example, probably as like a Aesop's fable, but you have to forego explaining the meta abstract concept. Although Aesop's fables did end with a moral, but the moral was kind of simplified. Go ahead, Joshua.
Oh, I'm just brainstorming with you. If you think you have to forego doing the complex thing, that can be this is what I'm trying to explain. That's you dumbing it down for somebody. So you're leaving out the most important parts because they're too complicated and hard to communicate.
Yeah.
Whereas the key to the success of getting a lot of people to view it is to take something super complex and make it entertaining. And you don't have to give all of the backstory, all of the information, all the prerequisites. You don't have to communicate it in a way where they understand at the level you do.
Yeah.
You just have to communicate it in a way where they don't want to turn off their play button, where they just keep watching. In other words, it just has to be entertaining enough to where someone goes, oh, that's really interesting. I'll never understand that, but that's caught my attention.
Right. Well, any technology sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic. It's just magic, just take my word for it. The technology is magic.
Yeah, but don't dumb it down. I mean, it's not magic, but it's kind of like magic, but it's not magic. But to me, it's magic.
Yeah.
I think it's magic, but it's not. If you do it, people will be like, oh, you know what? I can relate.
Yeah. I have to think about this because this is an issue that a lot of academics have wrestled with and very, very few have succeeded at, which is take an academic research topic and find a way to present it to the general public. One guy who did it, who's pretty far afield from my area of expertise, so it was important. There was a cultural anthropologist named Daniel Quinn. He taught, I think, in Austin, Texas, or somewhere in Texas, probably Austin. And he had this theory from cultural anthropology that dated back to how humans reinvented civilization upon the advent of the agrarian culture, when humans stopped being hunter-gatherers and started farming and herding and growing their own food supply. And that was a huge shift in the way humans behaved. And they had a whole cultural evolution around the advent of the agrarian culture. And he had a theory about that, which was his own theory. He'd tried for like 30 years to write a version of it that a lay audience could read without being a specialist in cultural anthropology. And he finally gave up and wrote a novel. And the novel was, actually, it was a Socratic dialogue. So he had a sort of a doofus young male adult come in and talk to a lowland gorilla who was the Socratic interlocutor. And the whole book is a Socratic dialogue between the lowland gorilla and this guy, Alan, forget his last name, kind of a dorky guy. And in the process of the book and the Socratic dialogue, he reveals this theory, this model of cultural anthropology. Sam?
I'm going to chunk it down further because I just asked ChatGPT that who is the most famous writer that can simplify the most complicated subject, and Richard Feynman was showed up. So when I read what the answer was, I put it on the chat here, is that the answer is that, from my perspective, the reason I want to chunk it down is actually when we want to communicate, we want to get the student, for example, to apply the quantum equation correctly or something like that. So technically accurately, that's one requirement.
Yeah.
And I tell you, for the purpose of we need to get 10,000 views, it has nothing to do with that. We want to deviate from the technically accurate part of it because it's too demanding and you require there's no way you can do that. You cannot dumb it down. Equation, you're missing a negative sign, a plus sign, you're done. So that's technically inaccurate. Then the second part is that our goal, remember the conversation we had yesterday was to move from level 2 to level 3 on humans learning. So that's how we go. So we can use metaphor, we can use pebbles, or you can use whatever the heck that we did to move them. Maybe 1 inch is better than 1 feet or something along that line. So that's the thing. And then, of course, what Josh was talking about beautifully is that it's entertaining, it's got hook. They have to give up other fun thing to do to come to your funner thing to do. It's the trick. Because otherwise, in 3 seconds, you lose them.
Yeah, it's more than a trick. You really have to be a genius. I mean, take Umberto Eco, who was a semiotician, and he had all this, academic stuff in semiotics, and he wrote 2 novels. He wrote The Name of the Rose and Foucault's Pendulum. But these novels are for educated adults, they're not for children. I mean, so even when he went into writing novels, and one of them got made into a movie, The Name of the Rose got it made into a movie with Sean Connery as a central character in the story. But The Name of the Rose is still an adult level story.
Yeah, I don't want to get into the novel part because they're like 300 pages long and we don't have the attention span right now. We have, if I may, like a 1 minute, if I can get somebody to read 1 minute, I'm already like jumping up and down, so happy, like, all that stuff. So if I can get the attention for 20 seconds, I'm really happy already. So I'm satisfied with the 20-second clips or even the post of a picture. If they say they like it, a 10,000 like, I'm already happy. How's that?
Yeah, I'll show you the shortest thing I wrote. This is just only in text. Where's the share thing? Here it is. Okay.
Josh want to say something. Can you let him?
Oh, I'm just, if you're serious about getting 10,000 likes, Sam.
Well, the reason we want to do that, as I say, is emergency, right? Why is it emergency? Because we are not getting younger. Just assuming that we have 20 years to live, we want to move the humanity to the next level from level 2 to level 3 in the learning 6 level, whatever I want, a simplification thing, right? So I'm setting a 10,000 goal so that we helping the people to get enlightened or whatever, you go to the next level so that we have a better world. And maybe in 10 years time, we have a better kind of more sympathy society or something along that line. That's my daydream.
Here's one that I think people on Zoom will appreciate. So I'll get the share go. So you see the share here?
Yeah.
This is, you can look at the date. When did I write this? This is 10 years ago.
10 years ago, right? My birthday.
Yeah. So I got to move this thing out of the way. All right. So Schadenfreude theater, the argument culture versus the Bohm dialogue model. Welcome to Schadenfreude theater, hosted by Gastrin Bomason, one of my Muppet characters. GB, that's Gastrin Bomason. For the sake of forsaking the argument culture, I propose a demonstration. Result: the Bohm dialogue model is superior to the debate model of the argument culture. Scattered audience applause. Gastrin Bomason. Speaking for the Bohm dialogue model is Moulton, the Schmagegi scientist. Speaking for the argument culture is Barsoom Tork, anthropologist from Mars. Let's begin with Professor Tork. Barsoom Tork. I propose to argue that the argument culture, with its classical paradigm of taking a position and defending it with maximum zeal, while simultaneously bashing and trashing one's opponent, is a tried and true practice of earthling culture, dating back to the dawn of civilization. Who could possibly argue against that? Gastrin Bomason. Bolton, may we have your response? Bolton. You'll get no argument from me. Gets up and leaves. Gastrin Bomason. There you have it, boys and girls. No argument. Who can argue with that? The audience sits mostly in stunned silence, except for some nervous laughter. Gastrin Bomason also gets up and leaves the room. Barsoom Tork nods approvingly and uploads the finished video to YouTube. Now, this one I think would make a nice little end this share here. I think that would make a nice little cartoon video, and it's easy enough, I think, for grammar school kids to understand. But it's deep because we live in a culture that loves to argue and debate. And I have been trying, well, you can see that's 10 years ago I wrote that. I've been trying for years to get out of the bloody argument culture, take a position and defend it, and into the dialogue model, either Socratic dialogue or Bohm dialogue or some kind of a learning sympathesis model where you're not trying to convince the other guy, but you're trying to learn together at some common frontier. That's the kind of thing, I don't even think that needs to be dumbed down, maybe a little bit, but I should give you the link for that one. And
thank you. Yeah.
We can try that one first with ChatGPT rewriting it.
Yeah.
Because maybe Schadenfreude theater might be a bit too arcane.
So this is how I think about it as you're reading this, is that I'm an energy freak, right? So when you open the door between one hot room and one cold room, guess what happened? The energy exchange, you reach a
Right.
thermal equivalent.
Right.
But the thing is, in the beginning, there's so much exchange and energy. So the argument is actually exchange of energy.
Yeah. So back
Joshua, you need to say something. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I just worked in marketing my whole life, so I'm just listening to you guys and there's 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing by Jack Trout and Al Rise. And you guys are immuting a lot of the laws of marketing when you're talking, and it's hard for me to be quiet. I'm trying to just be quiet and listen.
what was
I'm
the
just
verb
listening to
what was the verb you used? I thought I saw you said immuting, but that can't be. That's not a verb. What did you say?
it is the verb, yes.
Im-
Immutable is the name of the book. The 22 immutable things that you
Oh, so
cannot
we're
not
violating
do.
an inviolable law.
Yeah, lots of them in marketing.
Oh, break the rules. So
Uh,
this I'm really big on breaking the rules. Because all
well, the rules are there for a reason. The rules are there for a reason. And one of the rules that's really important, just like you can't break the rules of physics, you can't break the rules of marketing. And one of the rules is you can't communicate to large masses of people if you have no one in the room, if you don't have an audience. So you have to get an audience first before you communicate.
Yeah. Yeah, I throw it over the transom, over the transom is the name of my blog, essentially. I throw it
Yeah,
on my blog and it's over the transom and nobody picks it up off the floor.
yeah, I'm just sharing with you. You have to create the audience first and then communicate. Meaning, if you have a McDonald's in the desert and you're wondering why nobody's coming, it's because there's nobody around.
Exactly.
It's not because the McDonald's isn't exciting or attractive, but I'm saying you have to first put the playhouse or the theater up with the audience. You need people to know. You can have the best movie in the world, but if there's no distribution, it's not playing in any movie theaters. No one's going to come and watch it.
Yeah.
And it's the same on YouTube. If you have a YouTube channel that has 100 subscribers, you're not going to ever get 10,000 views. You need to have a certain amount of subscribers. And it's the same.
That's kind of the issue with systems thinking. Systems thinking is such a rarefied kind of thinking in terms of the demographics. Maybe 5% can engage in systems thinking, maybe 10% can appreciate it without doing it. But on any one attempt to talk about systems thinking, you get the one person who gets the good audience is Nora Bateson. Nora Bateson has managed to get a huge audience because she's presenting her father's work in systems thinking, but I don't quite understand how she does it. She rewrites everything, you know.
Well, she's already done it. So I'm saying if you call up Nora Bateson and say, what would your audience want to hear? And then you tailor this to that audience, it might be successful. That's all I'm saying. That's the rule. It's simple, but it's real. It's call up Nora Bateson and have this conversation with Nora Bateson.
She does the same thing her father says. She makes up terminology. So Gregory Bateson made up terms like schismogenesis and double bind and a few other terms he made up that somehow found their way into the vocabulary. Nora Bateson's most recent made up word is symathesis. And she's been at it, I think, for about 5 years. Symathesis just means learning together. Is it like we talked about yesterday about an assembly? You call an assembly, and what's the point of the assembly, the gathering, is to get to the frontiers of the group, the frontiers of learning, and collectively learn together in some kind of a seminar or a forum or whatever. And Nora Bateson's word for that is symathesis, which is just a made-up word from, I think, Latin or Greek. The math in symathesis is the same math as mathematics. It just means learning, which is surprising to know that the word math means learning.
The construction worker is here. I need to jump out right now. I'll be right back.
Okay, so.
So the whole point, I think, of yesterday's conversation, Joshua, is that Sam has organized these meetings for about 5 years now or whatever, and the whole point is to collaborate. But as near as I can tell, we've never produced a product which reached beyond the local group itself. I mean, hardly anybody who's not in our inner circle has attended any presentation. We've never even made a presentation for the general public. And the idea was, how can we construct something, literally collaborate to produce something that's interesting, informative, entertaining, worth paying attention to, and somehow succeeds in attracting the audience. And I think that's a lot harder than most people realize.
Oh, yeah. It's storytelling is hard. Audience gathering is hard.
Yeah.
And keeping attention is hard.
Right.
To me, it's a 3-step process.
And storytelling means you have to make up a fictional allegory or parable or fable or legend or whatever that is synthesized, so it's not the truth. You hide the truth inside of a fictional story. And Sam is on a jag about it's got to be the truth. Anything that's written as an allegory or parable or a fable, well, that's what they did in theology, and we can't have that because that's not the truth. That's a made-up story. It's got made-up characters in it. And I'm trying to talk him out of that because that's the only way to reach a wide audience is to invent
Okay.
characters.
I want to
ahead,
make
Sam.
sure that I'm not doing it for the sake of doing it. I want to make sure that we are well aware of that. That's a reason why we're doing what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
So, and for me, unless we have a common goal, nobody will drive together in the same direction so that we can get to wherever we need to get to. So putting an artificial goal is better than no goal, is the way I think about it. It's like, unless you have a target, if you don't have a target, you practice your muscle, right?
Yeah.
Once you have a target, everybody learn how to shoot that at a target. So it's the most efficient way to get things done.
I agree with Sam's goal of collaboration, but collaboration to produce what?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, Sam.
Thank you.
Did you get your thingy fixed?
So let me add a little bit of clarification. I actually don't denigrate allegory or story or fable or fairy tale, any of that, okay? What I do think, though, is that various forms of story are intended for different audiences. So
Oh, yeah.
I don't have any issue with children being given, story tales, fables, and then, graduating towards, let's say high school understanding, then college level understanding, and graduate understanding, then research level understanding. I have no issue with that, okay? What I have issue with is that any of those allegories or fairy tales becomes the foundation of everything else that is being proposed or believed or espoused or used as justification for other social behavior or decisions. That's where I have a problem. So please understand that's my position on this one. Okay.
Oh, I forget the guy's name who introduced Gaia, Gaia, I think it's the pronunciation. So Gaia is this sort of abstract representation of the earth, the soul of the earth. And Gaia is a deity, really it's a deity. And then Dr. Seuss had the Lorax. The Lorax is the one who worries about the environment. So the Lorax is Greta Thunberg, the cartoon version of Greta Thunberg. So even in modern times, you create these sort of superhero characters, these deific characters like Gaia, to represent some high-level abstraction. And why do they do it? The answer is because it reaches an audience.
Let me jump in real quick here. So think of it like a ladder or stairs. You got to go to one step before you go to the next one. So when you give a metaphor to someone to explain some theory, they have to live on that for, I call that stages. So you get to get on it, step on it, on that step. And then the goal is not to tell them to stay in the step. You say, I don't want them to stay on this step. Yeah, nobody wants to stay on the step if you give them a better step to go to.
Yeah. I mean, a couple other examples is Mother Nature, Father Time, Old Man Winter. These are all classical imaginary characters that sort of are responsible. It's like Jupiter, Zeus is the one that's responsible for some phenomenon. And if you don't anthropomorphize it with a character, if you just talk about it in the abstract, you've lost 95% of your audience. You have to create a character that represents whatever high level abstraction you want. And the higher you go, the more it sounds like a deity. because it's responsible for everything. But what are you going to do? I mean, this
Again,
is
we
how,
need the steps to get to the next level. Unless we have steps, we cannot get to the next level. So the question is, what step are you providing so that they will leave that step they're standing on right now?
you know. And when you get down to 5 years to 10 years old, which are the so-called the magic years, this is when people really get their brains wired, that kind of gets hardwired forever. Not entirely, because you can outgrow it, but a lot of people never outgrow the magic years. And so when my father died and I went to see the rabbi before the funeral, the rabbi confessed. He says, when we talk about God in Judaism, he says, we're doing what the rabbis call pediatric Judaism. He tells me this word. He says, pediatric Judaism is the version that you tell to the most naive members of the congregation, which are most of them. He says, in seminary, we don't do pediatric Judaism. We do very abstract stuff. But he says, you can't do that with the congregation because the congregation won't know what you're talking. He says, he says, we do pediatric Judaism, and all preachers, all clerics end up doing pediatric versions of their religion, because otherwise they haven't got a congregation that's going to pay attention. Sam?
All by that, if among themselves, they're not necessarily restricting themselves to pediatric level interaction. What I don't know yet is in most religions, are they? In other words, if you find that there's pastors, priests, wizards, sorcerers of any religion that are not at the level of this analytic theology that you're describing, okay, then we're still, even in those positions of authority, using pediatric understanding.
Yeah, we are.
And that's what I'm saying is limiting us. We need to actually understand that, as Sam says, there's levels, okay? And if we're talking at, let's say, analytic theology or systems understanding or critical thinking or model-based reasoning, all that sort of thing, then we can figure out, are they at that level of discourse or are they not?
I can tell you they're not. I'll
This
tell
is
you how I
why-
know. I'll tell you how I know they're
But this is why I think it is possible to interrogate and inquire and engage. And you can then easily, I think, tell whether someone is at a pediatric level or at a analytic theology level, systems thinking level.
almost.
That is a key distinction.
Yeah.
Okay. And those with authority who are still at pediatric levels, those are the ones who are actually still pulling the advance of civilization backwards. That is a threat to survival.
Go ahead, Sam.
Let me address about the pediatric learning here. I model masters. I study very hard about master. What it takes to get to be a master. I want to use a simple metaphor, like the triple somersault or the ice skater do. You know what they practice 80% of the time? They
Double
practice their basic steps.
Yeah.
So that they can, when they need to get. So I won't want to call that pediatric or whatever it is. If we get the basic to be simpler, to be acceptable, so that they keep practicing it, and though they're practicing the basic again and again and again, that's how you become a master to the next level. So I want you to think of that perspective. We are not saying that, okay, because if you practice so much basic, you're not so smart. No, it's not true.
Yeah. You have to build the step that you're standing on firmly before you can use it to rise to the next level. So if you've
And you
only
constantly check the basic step. You have
Right.
to constantly practice the basic step. That's the key I'm trying to stress here.
I agree with you. If you don't have a solid foundation at level 0, then you can't stand on level 0 with 1 foot to start building level 1.
Yeah.
So even though you don't want to ever stay forever at level 0, you got to
Right.
build level 0 so you have a place to stand to build level 1.
I'm saying that you have to spend 80% of your time on level 0.
Yeah.
Again and again, continuously, like taking a shower every day.
I'll tell you a couple of stories. Oh, go ahead, Sam. I'll wait.
Okay, so this presumes, what you just said, Barry, presumes that it's a linear progression from 0 to 1 to 3 to 4, okay? I argue it is not. In other words, there's a notion of partial ordering. You can reach level 1 from, let's say, A or B. You can reach level 2 from either 1 or 2 or 3. You can reach level 3 from W, X, or Y, or Z, or Q, okay? That's the notion of partial ordering. So to require that someone go through level 0 in order to get to level 1 is a linear restricted model where there may have been another origination that lets you get from someplace else to level 1. And I think that's important to recognize, because otherwise you'll say other people, presumably someone who has not gone through level 0 in your model, has not yet achieved that level of understanding. And I think that is not necessary. That is too restrictive.
Then we're not meeting a large congregation. Then we're doing one-on-one mentoring. So the rabbi sits down with one person, you know, 1 day a week for an hour, and works with that one person at their frontier, instead of having a congregation of a dozen youngsters going together. You end up having to do one-on-one 7 times a week instead of one-on-many 1 time a week. This is the problem of doing it custom education for an individual. Yes, you can mentor, but you can't mentor a whole congregation one at a time.
That's not my point.
This is getting to the 10,000. If you want to get to the 10,000, you're going to have to work at the lowest common denominator.
So may I retry stating my point?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're presuming a pastor with a congregation is presumably at level 0, and the pastor is trying to get them to level 1. Okay. I'm saying that there's a whole different congregation in a different building with a different person standing in the front who could get them to a different level 1 or a different level A. Okay. It doesn't have to be this particular congregation. So that's why I'm saying it's not a linear model. You can actually arrive at enlightenment, quote unquote, you know, many different paths. And so I'm even arguing that your statement that you have to do individual one-on-one, that's still the restrictive linear model where you're saying you're going from that pastor's level 0 to that pastor's level 1.
That's student's level 0, that's student's level 1.
I'm saying there are multiple different ways of looking at this path, okay? And that you have to open yourselves up to more different paths. And the path that insists on religion is the one that I am questioning, because that is a very restrictive, very, very limited notion of how people evolve. Over.
When I was in grammar school, about 3rd grade or 4th, maybe about 3rd grade, the teacher would do the lesson of the day, the syllabus for the day. And some of the students would get it, and a lot of them wouldn't. They were just kind of lost in the fog. But the students who wanted to get it, but didn't, they would come to me and say, Barry, can you explain what the teacher was saying today? And I developed a reputation for recognizing the stumbling block for each individual peer in my classroom. There was always one step in this whole presentation that they stumble on. And if I could find that stumbling block, I could get them past it. And time again, one of my classmates would say, gee, Barry, if the teacher explained it that way, I would have got it right away. The problem is that every individual had a different stumbling block, and that you had to go through every detailed step until you found the one that they were not getting. And when you got them through that step, then everybody had their own stumbling block. So that was when I was in 3rd grade. Now, I'm going to go back to something that Sam asked about, whether people who are studying theology can get beyond narrative to analytic theology. There's a group of people who attend a Protestant church in Newton. And the reason I know them is because several of them are academics. One's at MIT and one's at, I can't remember the one that changed its name. One of them is a dean of social work, and the other one is a professor at the MIT lab. And about once a month, they hold a what's called a small group. And it's a small group of about 6 people who study topics in theology. Sometimes it's Bible study, sometimes it's modern books, sometimes other stuff. And when I raised the point about analytic theology, one of the members of that group actually attended a seminary. She actually studied theology as a discipline. And I think she even got ordained. She says, I never heard of analytic theology. So when they finished the last round of stuff that they were reading, they said, Barry, would you want to take up a couple of sessions to talk about analytic theology? I said, well, yeah, I've been writing about it, for a while. So, if you're interested in analytic theology, we can do it. I've done it before to other groups, but I haven't never really found more than 2 or 3 people in a group that is interested in theological investigations to get interested in analytic theology, is because it's mathematical, it's analytical, and most theology is narrative. Anyhow, so that's that story. I think there was another one I was going to say. Maybe I've forgotten it already.
Yeah, the trouble I have is that I'm analytical in everything, not just theology.
Well, see, even at Bell Labs, when they gave me a project to work on, and I had to do the analysis and construct a systems theoretic model and then solve it for best practices and then explain it, even my peers in my department and my department head found it difficult to understand the analysis that I had spent 6 months doing. And the one time I really appreciated that was when we got a brand new symbolics, an adjacent department got a brand new symbolics list machine. We're talking about around 1980. And I went over that list machine. I literally spent a month learning symbolics Lisp. And I did a computer animation of the mathematical model. Took me a friggin' month to make a 3-minute animation. And then I played it to my department head. And he said something I'll never forget. He said, now I understand. When I gave him the paper that had the mathematics and the narrative, it was gibberish.
Yeah.
When I gave the mathematics to the computer, I said, make me a cartoon. My department head, who's no slouch, says, now I understand. Took me a friggin' month. So I appreciate the notion of creating cartoons. I also appreciate how difficult it is, time consuming and difficult. You spend a friggin' month to make a 3-minute cartoon, at least in the 1980s.
But keep in mind that whatever the time, even if you spend 10 years on it, this cartoon will last forever. It will influence an infinite number of people.
And the people who wrote those stories 3,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, their stories lasted forever because they wrote them for level 1 or level 0. And that's the audience that, attended.
Yeah. It may take them a lifetime to write that, things that 3,000 years ago or whatever that is. Yeah. That's their life. Yeah.
I mean, according to the story, King Solomon was an old man when he wrote the book that's called Ecclesiastes. In Greek, it's just simply called Kohelet, which means the guy who calls the gathering, the seminar. But he called a gathering, and that was the first famous example of, he wrote that at the end of his life. And he didn't write it himself. I mean, he had his staff do a lot of the writing for him. He probably dictated a lot of it.
Hey, Josh.
Oh, I just saw Sam put in the chat Lao Tzu and the Tao. I was about to say that. So I was curious what Sam Chan and Barry, what your thoughts are on that work.
And see, most of the stuff I write, put up on the blogs. Well, I've had a blog for about 15 years. So since about age 65. So I didn't start writing about this high level stuff until my retirement years. Before that, I was writing stuff to earn a living, which was very arcane and technical. Josh?
So my question is, a lot of people talk about things that they've heard about, but not things that they've truly grokked and spent time with.
Exactly.
Whether it be the Bible or Lao Tzu's writing, the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah.
I've read the Tao Te Ching probably at least a few hundred times, and I still haven't grokked it completely. I've spent a lot of time on certain passages to try to understand them, and even 10 years to try to implement some of the leadership qualities of the passages of being a leader from behind.
Yeah.
And what does that mean to sit and be quiet and listen to people talk for 5 years on a GCC conversation? It takes it's going to take me another 5 years to even really understand what it means to implement Lao Tzu's type of philosophies. But I think we're kind of stuck in this smart person's problem. We're trying to analyze what analyzing that we're in the meta right now, but I didn't get to go to the conversation yesterday. So I'm curious to ask the question to everybody here. What is the intention that you guys have cohered, or it's a cohesive intention that everybody wants to communicate? Has that been clarified yesterday?
It's in the second half of the video. The first half of the video, we kind of rambled. The second half of it, we kind of focus on it. So I'll give you a
Could someone summarize it
I'll give you a
in maybe a couple sentences?
So basically the idea is we have some new tools. The narrative AIs that can rewrite the same material in different modes. It can write poetry, it can write allegories, it can write essays, and it can write them at different grade levels. So we have the opportunity to use them to revise a document to a different grade level than it was written at, and to a different form, to poetry or allegory or parable or fairy tale or essay, whatever you like. So one idea is we should start to exercise those affordances of the chat GPTs to produce, say, scripts for cartoon dramas. And then once you got a script, now you go into this other thing where you can take the script and have cartoon characters enact the script with not just the speech, but gestures and whatever. And I had played yesterday, 12 years ago, I had recorded 8 1 or 2 minute cartoon videos when those cartoon systems first came out, and they were free for like 1 or 2 minutes worth of. And I played about, I don't know, 2 or 3 of them yesterday, just to show what was the state of the art 12 years ago. And I could write in one morning a short script. I would write the script. And then the hard part was getting the cartoon characters to, articulate the script and have at least some kind of gesturing. And now Sam Chan is saying, we should be able to automate that with the new systems and have much longer dialogues than just a 30-second or 1 minute or 2 minute dialogue. Because that was about as much as, I was prepared to muster. Once they monetized those, they went to the high-end market, so they got to be very expensive. So you could do like a 15-minute one, and I wasn't going to plunk down that kind of money for that level. So that's the idea. Generate some dramatic scripts or other material, maybe some artwork, possibly, and some cartoonish animations. And if it's going to cost money, Sam Chan says he'll plunk down some money to pay for the subscriptions, because they're not cheap. I'm pretty sure they're not cheap. I mean, just the Otter speech to text, when that came out, they wanted big bucks for speech to text. I think they still do.
Oh. No, it's not big bucks.
Yeah, but it was not.
I paid for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay. So here's the question: which document, and have we translated it through a large language model and clarified it into a script?
Well, so the point is that I've written a lot of blog posts that are, I've written a lot of think pieces over the years on a lot of topics, and the think pieces are basically up on blogs and Google sites and places like that. The Google Knoll, which is the encyclopedia site, they're all up on the internet, and the topics come around. Every time that somebody raises a topic, I say, oh, I wrote about that 17 years ago. Here's my little think piece on it, and I give them the think piece, right? but it's not necessarily written for that person. It's just written for, arbitrary college level audience. And the idea is, among all that corpus, let's pick something, at least one or two initially, to think that the message is worth communicating, the content's important, it's abstract enough that it's not easy to understand, figure out a way to package something up that would reach an audience. And Sam Chan would like to reach 10,000. I think that's a bit unlikely, but that's certainly a measurable goal. I mean, if I reach 100 people, that's the jackpot for me. If I get 100 people to read something and really read it, not just look at it, not actually read it. For me, 100 people is a jackpot at the level that I write. Mostly think pieces in a narrative format.
The seed of the redwood tree is actually smaller than a sesame seed.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, have you guys gone around the room and you pick the one that you like most out of all your writings, Barry, and then Sam does the same, and Sam does the same?
I showed the two Sams. Well, I played one of them that I'd made an animation out of. And afterwards on Messenger, I gave Sam Chan like 3 or 4 more. And the link to where all 8 of them are up on YouTube that I saved on YouTube.
Okay.
And
So
the
you've
one,
got 8.
well, I have 8 that I made using Extra Normal and Go Animate. Those were the 2 competing cartoon animation systems of 12 years ago.
I remember you showing it a while back. I remember.
Right. So I made about half of them are in Extra Normal, about half of them are in Go Animate. Go Animate, when they went commercial, got bought out by a company called Vyond, VYOND. And at that point, all the free stuff went away, and you had to subscribe at pretty steep rates. But by that time, I had managed to get them up on YouTube, at least 8 of them. There were some that weren't that good. I didn't get up on YouTube. But the one on the argument culture, because that's something I keep hacking on, is that I really don't like the argument culture. It drives me up the wall because nobody's learning anything. Sam takes a position, argues his position, then I take the opposite position, and neither of us we're in forever détente. I don't want to be in forever détente. That's why you're not collaborating on anything, because we're taking opposite positions. He's arguing a position and I'm counter arguing it. I hate that. I abhor that. I deprecate that. But I can't get out. I can't get out of the argument culture. Argument culture. I can't get out of it.
But yesterday we have a breakthrough. Remember?
We did.
You have to watch it, Josh. I don't want to spoil the watch it and see where the breakthrough is. So I call that, when the doors close, there's no energy exchange. I don't care. You argue to death, but at least there's progress. So an energy exchange.
Yeah, that's what I've learned. I was just gonna
go ahead.
Go. What Sam's saying, I think, is the most important thing is energy exchange. And one of my favorite rappers, he actually calls his tour the Energy Exchange Tour. And that's all he's doing is an energy exchange with his audience. And he's giving them the energy that he has for his performance, and they're giving the energy of the crowd coming back. But the idea of, at least on social media, I noticed is a lot of people want to tell people what they want to say, but they're not willing to go to all the audience's information and like their posts and exchange energy and be interested in what their audience has to say. And it's a hard exchange when it's 1 to 10,000. It's a very hard thing to do to like 10,000 people.
Right. It's got to be
go and
it's broadcast. It's a one-way broadcast.
So this is
it's not a dialogue.
So to finish what I'm trying to say, go ahead, Sam.
Yeah. So this is what I tell my student in my class is I can come from the heaven and bring all my ingredients from heaven and show you how to cook my heavenly meals. Or I can live with you for a month and eat what you cook so far and create some heavenly meals out of what you have already have.
Yeah. And I think in that vein of that metaphor with those heavenly cooking is the key to success from my perspective is to create an audience of say 5, but those 5 people like 5 other people's posts, and then you do that exponential. So you go from there's 4 of us here. If we all went on Facebook right now and liked 5 people's stuff, then there's 20 likes there. And so it's creating an audience of energy exchange throughout the community. And that exponential can go as far as you want it to go in terms of communication of what we all like together and we're willing to exchange with multiple people. If there's people in the group that are not willing to exchange, then of course it slows down the transfer, but there will always be a statistical, analytical, systems thinking number where one person likes 27 things and another person likes 2 things, but the average is 10. So if it's a multiple of 10, then you get to the number of 1,000. You have 1,000 person audience, but they're liking 10 things from other people. You get to the 10,000 mark. So I'm saying that there's actual numbers and formulas for creating these types of interactions at high levels, but it's really important that you allow for the ability to exchange energy with multiple people. In other words, if we're not including more than 4 people into this conversation, then it's going to be very difficult. And we could include 5 people, just one other person, like the Nora Bateson. And if she has an audience that she's already cultivated, she's already liked 1,000 people's stuff, then that number goes up exponential because it's not 10. She's already communicated to 1,000 people because she's done that over a larger period of time. So I know I'm speaking in simplistic terms, but really just knowing one person that happens to be the head of a major movie studio that has put out movies that millions of people have liked, their reach is a lot bigger. And I think it's really important to go around to different places and talk to different audiences and get some feedback.
You know, George Carlin, the stand-up comic who had very high energy, he would get these audiences, theater-sized audiences of maybe 1,000 people, and he would rail about all the idiocies of our culture. And he was most famous for the 7 dirty words you can't say on TV, but he did a lot of other topics. He generated a lot of energy, and he got a lot of positive feedback from, but his audience was self-selected because they paid to buy a ticket to come and hear him. And so he got himself famous. But that's the kind of energy that, you know, how does anybody have that much stage presence, that deeply thought through material and well-crafted and able to present it to an audience that he's in sync with his audience? That's genius level.
Right, but he also spoke to groups. You ask any comedian that has become a comedian, and they put in the time to go to groups of 5 people, groups of 10 people, groups of maybe, if they're lucky, 12 people.
Yeah.
But they did that night after night, day after day. Before George Carlin was famous in the 1960s, he was doing that in order to become on television and be that clean-cut comedian and gain that audience. And then he went out on a limb with his 7 dirty words and lost all of that audience and gained another audience. And then he found a group of people that were willing to promote his stuff called Home Box Office, which was HBO. And that group had created an audience for their comedy, and therefore he grew it from that. So I'm saying that it seems like it just happens overnight, but it really is something that you build up over time.
It's a long
In other words,
it's a long slog.
and that's why you go to places like Toastmasters in order to learn that skill of speaking to 10 people. But from my experience, there's been certain talks that I've gone to where I had to tell everybody I've ever met in my life about that talk, because it was so compelling and so amazing. And there's a handful of those talks in my life, but I've told probably at least 4 or 5, maybe 600 people about that one moment.
Yeah.
Because it was so compelling.
Yeah, I do see some people who are doing revision number 5 of theology. They don't call it theology, they call it secular humanism now. They had to get rid of all the vocabulary that Sam doesn't like. It's the same content, it's the same teachings. It's just that they had to change all the vocabulary and make it secular humanism. So it's not it's officially not a religion, although it's beliefs and practices. I define a religion as a set of axiomatically adopted beliefs on faith and a set of derivative practices, which if you believe the axioms, you do the derivative practices. And we think of religion as a particular set of beliefs and practices, but the rule of law is one and science is one. Science has foundational beliefs and practices, and so does the rule of law. And they all meet the definition of religion as a set of beliefs adopted axiomatically and a set of derivative practices, which would make sense if the foundational beliefs are reliable. And the ones I'm trying to overthrow are the ones that are totally bogus. And the one that's most bogus is the rule of law, because it's based on an axiom called law and order, which has been overthrown scientifically and mathematically.
Yes, Sam.
I think that's a very generous definition of religion, because in that definition of religion, mathematics is a religion.
It is.
Any system of behavior is a religion according to your definition.
Right, because everything has axiomatic beliefs that are not proven.
Right. But that, to me, is not typically what people call a religion. Okay?
I'm not a typical person, Sam. I am not typical. I'm an odd.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying according to your definition. So I'm actually saying that, okay? But if you actually were talking to most regular people,
Right.
that would be a very foundational definitional difference that would have to be established first before you make that claim. So I think, whether or not you want to continue making that claim, that's your choice, because that's typically the definition of a mathematical way of thinking, that there are axiomatic foundations that then have derivative truths and behavior. The problem is, in science and in mathematics, those derivatives can be questioned by a very clear process about whether they are truth or not truth, okay? In religions, I argue, and I would actually, claim, it ain't easy in religions, because there's not just reasoning and evidence that you have to plow through. It's authority and dogma. So I think the religions have a lot of other baggage over.
Yeah, it's also dogmatic to say that religions are dogmatic, because not all religions are dogmatic. Some are, but not all of them.
I would say than most.
I put down 2 links on the chat here. One of them is Conscious Leadership Guild. I co-founded this 4 years ago with about 100 members right now, with a third is executive, a third is academia and consultant. Anyway, so that's the website that some blog in it that if you're interested to look at it.
Yeah.
The other organization is URI.org. It's an interfaith group worldwide, created about 22 years ago. I co-founded, I'm a founding members of that as well. So I have a lot of group that we can practice. I have a lot of audience that I can practice with and participate in all that stuff. So I'm ready when you are.
The thing that I keep coming back to is that before you can overthrow a misconception, and let me tell you, the world is full of misconceptions, little ones, big ones, ones dating back 6,000 years that are misconceptions, which are known to be misconceptions, which are still not overthrown, and modern ones in physics, which are still debated. Before you can overthrow a misconception, you've got to be prepared to supplant it with something that is not a misconception and can be understood and accepted and adopted and practiced. And that's the problem our species is pediatric. There aren't very many people who can enflesh the next higher level that's going to overthrow the practices that are based on the false beliefs that date back 6,000 years. You gotta
Okay,
have.
can I say this, Barry? Can I
Yeah.
say this? In order for you to throw away the misconception, you have to create a better one.
Exactly. Exactly. And the problem is people have created better ones, but nobody understands them because they're too abstract.
Well, that doesn't fit the better one means, better one. They have the thing. I love one of the posts I have from the teacher of my toddler class is that what's a toddler? Whatever he sees is mine. Whatever I want to play is mine. I don't care what is mine. So you need to create something that the toddler wanted. They want it.
I mean, this is where Ayn Rand really screwed everything up. She proposed that selfishness was a value. Greed is good. And the Republicans adopted the Ayn Rand as their deity.
Well, she's right in many ways. Again, I want you to think of it as a steps on the ladder. Okay, it was useful at the time. It was a solution for the situation that it is. So today's solution is tomorrow's problem. So again, that's the steps on the ladder.
Have you ever seen the Mike Wallace interview of Ayn Rand, recorded, I think, in around 1960? Mike Wallace, the CBS, distinguished CBS journalist, interviewed Ayn Rand on camera around 1955, 60, I'm not sure exactly when, and you can still find the video on YouTube. And it's pretty obvious. In fact, there's a whole documentary around this whole thing, revealing just how, what's the word I'm looking for? How myopic the Ayn Rand philosophy is, how myopic, short-sighted, selfish, self-centered, and not considering the well-being of the community at large. And that's what the Republicans bought into. Go ahead, Josh. I want you to put your hand up.
Oh, I'm still back on what Sam just said. I thought it was quite profound. Today's solution is tomorrow's problem.
Oh, yeah. Eric Sevareid's famous observation, the Sevareid effect, that the myopic solution of today becomes the goddamn problem of tomorrow.
Yeah. And I think the reason Sam said that is to say some things make sense at a specific time,
right,
to solve a specific thing,
and they have,
but then they don't make sense. They don't last. And I'm saying
right,
the time frame that you're thinking on, Barry, is a time frame that most people don't think of, which you're thinking in terms of 5,000, 10,000,
yeah,
20,000 years, which is high level thinking. It's very
Exactly.
smart, where
exactly.
the rule of law, it does not last more than a certain amount of time, but it's lasting right now because we still have these rules of laws that are governing things. And there's systems that corrupt over a certain amount of time, but they'll last for, let's just say, a week, a month, a year. And a lot of people don't think past the next hour, let alone the next week or the next month or the next year or the next generation or the 7 generations, as I like to think. That's my personal time frame, is about somewhere between 150 to 200 years.
Yeah. Socrates predicted that the rule of law and democratic voting was going to fail. In fact, it failed in his lifetime because he was condemned to death for saying that and other things. But I mean, he predicted it 2,500 years ago that the system that humans had adopted around 5,000 years ago was bogus. Wasn't going to work. It was going to be very violent. And it was yesterday or day before, the federal government said the police in Minneapolis are so corrupt that you got to completely throw away the whole system and start from scratch. It's unfixable.
Well, I love the system that Sam Hahn put at the GCC years ago, which is we all started using the phrase at the end of when we were speaking so that we could give everyone a chance to speak, is to say, I am complete.
Yeah,
and I got that from Sam.
I've never.
Yeah, I know. No, it's okay, Barry. I totally get that. I've talked to you for a long time. So sometimes when I'm in the middle of that and then you go off, I forget what I'm trying to say because I thought what Sam Chan just said was so profound. Because he also said earlier in the conversation, let's put a target so there is a completion so we can hit a goal so we don't just keep going on forever.
Yeah.
And whatever that target may be. So I'm saying if we could all agree upon, and because I know you abhor arguing,
I do.
so in the vein of taking away the argument, if we could agree on a time scale that we're speaking in, then we don't have to argue because Sam Han is right, Sam Chan is right, you're right, but you're talking about different time scales. And so I just want to be clear on what the time scale is in terms of our thinking so that we can process something in the next month or the next week or the next year, or if this is going to go on for years and years.
You know, for me, the time scale is when our civilization collapses or our species goes extinct, which a lot of people who have looked at it think it's not very far off in the future, less than 7 generations, maybe only 3 or 4 generations. They used to plan for 7 generations, people who had the longest vision. Now you're planning for 5 years or 1 quarter.
Or maybe till the end of this year. Let's pick a time frame, I'm saying, and move on the conversation.
Right. So, well, the thing is that I want to do in my last decade, which is sort of what I'm in now, I want to do work that's going to last more than 6 months after my funeral. I want to do something that's going to last longer, you know, maybe longer than my own lifetime, but at least longer than a year. What's the point of spending 75, 85 years and producing something that, you know, goes up in smoke in 6 months? So what's the point of that?
And my ask is to create a trust around these conversations so that it goes on for 200 years and possibly longer.
Yeah. And so you have to write something or produce something that it's like South Park. South Park has been on the air, I think, longer than any cartoon now. And South Park is at level 0 or level -1. It really aims at the bottom.
But that's a level that where the massive amount of people are living.
Right. Look at the audience at South Park. Here's a cartoon that's been on the air for, I don't know, 30 years or something it is now. And they never run out of material. But they're aiming at the bottom of the audience.
I like Sam's 1-page paper on collaborology. That's another thing that I would like to see implemented and go on for a longer period of time.
Okay, well, turn it into a cartoon and somehow marry it with symathesis and learning communities. I did learning communities. Nora does symathesis. Sam does collaborology. These are all synonyms. Why do we have 3 different words and 3 different domains where they're really all doing the same thing at the abstract level?
Well, are you still there, Sam Han? I don't know if
Yeah.
is he still there? Or?
Well, he's muted and he's there.
I'm so curious to ask you, Sam, is the collaborology 2 people that you know, like, and trust? You've got Barry, you've got Sam Chan here. Are they holding you to your greatest good? Is my question in the paper that you wrote.
No, I've not asked them to do so.
Okay.
I may, but I haven't done it yet.
Fair enough.
Other people, by the way, whom I've asked, and they've done it for a period, but it's not currently active.
Okay. I think it's a sound ideology.
I think it is, although it's simple and yet it's not easy. Simple is not necessarily easy. That's one of the very key points that many people don't realize. And so when Sam says he's looking for 10,000 people, my first target is 300. Because to get 300 people to actually abide by 4 simple rules of behavior and actually hold each other accountable, that's a big ask, I'm finding after 10 years. Not many people will do that.
You can hold me to protocols, you can't hold me to rules.
I'm happy to share any experiences I have that will help you to get to your goal, Sam Chan, to
Thank you.
10,000. Just if I can be of help, let me know.
The reason I'm using 10,000 is because, you know, anything that's worth doing is worth doing it for 10,000 people. So you have to think beyond what you know. You have to say, it's the way I think about it is that unless you can leverage what is available, you're not going to make it. So it's like I'm trying to pick up 5 apples. What the hell is that? I can have a bag can have 30 apples easily. Yeah, I can have a truck can have 10,000 apples. So leverage what we have. Unless we're leveraging it, your energy go to argument, go to being egoistic, going ego. All that's you get stuck. You know, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to share, Barry, all the work that you've done, I believe at this moment in time, you could feed that into tokens. Take all the work you've done, use the web scraper. So there's ChatGPT Plus. It has a web scraper and a copilot. You can go up to your null websites, all the things you've ever done on the internet, scrape it all and put that into the ability for a character, which could be your avatar if you want, or you could create something else.
Yeah.
And someone could sit and discuss ad infinitum with all of those theories with a large language model at this moment in time.
Yeah. What would it take to have a neural network trained on pretty much all my writings for the last 35 years? What would it take?
A memory, which would be Pinecone, and go ahead, Sam.
I can answer that. Barry, one of the most exciting repos. Actually, since last week, I've actually found more. But last week I was talking about something called private GPT, right? Where you can actually take a large language model and point it at a local folder. So if you've got, let's say 50, 100, 500, 5,000 of your blogs in there, and you can actually query it. You can say, hey, where are all the times I talked about symathesis, okay? And it can actually then summarize for you your position on any given thing, symathesis versus collaborology versus, for example, okay? So today it's fascinating what's going on. I know Sam says, hey, it's a little bit limited, but it's a start. And every week these things evolve. And so in the intervening 7 days, I've already found, at least 3 other things that do that and claim to be better at it. Okay, so anyway, it's possible now, Barry.
Yeah.
Over.
I mean, I've got anthologies. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Joshua, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
He's
Joshua
freezing.
freeze?
Yeah, he
Oh,
freezes.
he's frozen. Put his hand up and he froze. I've got
Froze
anthologies
myself.
of
Yeah, I unfroze myself. It was my Wi-Fi. I turned it off and went to cellular.
okay.
I'm just going to share, there's a company out of India called convey.com. And the same thing that Sam Han was just talking about, you can create a character with a backstory and put all the information in there, and people can interact with that in a video game format. So you can be a non-player character in the video game, and you could insert yourself into very famous video games. Or if anyone came up to you in the video game, they could talk and discuss these things.
Yeah.
And that technology is available right now.
It sounds like it's within the state of the art, because I mean, they're training them on these data sets that they're carefully curated data sets. So I could give it the stuff that I've written since, well, around 1985 or so. I don't know whether or not that would be an easy thing to do or a hard thing to do, but it's certainly not outside the realm of possibility today. Then I could find out, what was I thinking 15 years ago that I don't think the same anymore. Because my thinking does evolve.
Yeah, last week I just paid $9.99 per month for a character.ai website. That is hard website, I tell you. I play with it a little bit, and it's really hard. I haven't had a chance to look at it for a private character building yet, but it's something interesting. I don't have the bandwidth at this moment right now.
Yeah, I mean, I would give it the links.
No problem. I put convey in the chat.
I would give it, because the stuff that I publish on the open internet is the stuff that I think is worth making publicly available. I've also got stuff on my personal computers that probably wouldn't necessarily want to be in the training, because first of all, I got personal information in it. But anything that's out on the Google Blogger, or WordPress, or Google Sites, or places like that, I'd love it to suck all that down and put it into a neural network database. I know you can do it with PDFs. If you've written a feature length PDF, there's a thing that will read a PDF and answer questions that's based on content of the PDF. I did that with Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie wrote a PDF. Anne-Marie wrote a paper. Well, I guess it was an academic paper called Love as a Pastiche. Pastiche is a French word. Anyhow, but a lot of her work is, what does this word love refer to? So it's a little bit like the mind's eye, Hofstadter and Dennett. What does this pronoun I refer to? Go ahead, Josh.
Barry, do you have Chat GPT, the paid version?
Yeah. Sam,
Could you open it on your computer and share it? Because they have a new thing that just came out this week with this Turbo 16, where you can put in more tokens on the left side. I'd be curious if you are able to access that.
let me find the right place for it here. It's not in that one, it's in this one.
Put more token. What are you
Okay,
talking
so
about?
now I gotta go to share. Where's a second. No, share screen. And then on, I think it's, yeah, it's that one. Okay. I don't know if I need to share the sound or not. Do I
Don't
need to
need
share
to
the
share.
sound?
No need to sound.
No need.
Okay. Okay, so here's my Chat GPT with tons and tons of stuff that I've done. And I've got GPT, this is the paid version, so it's got, now, you want me to go down to this where you can bring in
In the settings? Yep.
and then beta features,
Yeah, I would click on beta features
plugins?
and there should be something on the right side that says Turbo 16 is what it's called. And it gives you the ability to put in more tokens into the left side, meaning you can put in a larger amount of data information. So go to general, let's see if it's there. And systems, the theme.
Over here.
Uh-huh.
No.
I don't see it in here. I wonder if this is the,
Maybe it's not rolled out for everybody yet, because this is the paid, well, I mean, my account is a paid account, so you can see that I've got access.
well, click on new chat. Is that okay? Does it give you, and here we go, GPT-4. Okay, we got the beta on here. Sorry, my screen's a little small.
Do I want to choose plugins? Do I want to do this one?
Try everything.
And then,
Yeah.
and then, so this is so there may be some new plugins in the list of plugins. So this particular, well, yeah, you get to choose 3 out of this collection.
Right, I'm aware of plugins. It shouldn't be in plugins. It should be in the main area.
Oh,
And when you go to type in the message, it might be your browser, I'm not sure, but does it give you the opportunity to say assistant or not assistant
oh, you know what? This
when you're,
this is an old Google browser on an old operating system. Let me unshare this.
yeah,
one. Let me unshare this one and share one on a different computer. I've got another computer that
Okay.
I'm screen sharing to. Let's find it. Where is it? It's
and
What
at
do you
the
call
sake
it?
of not doing too much to, go ahead.
I'm gonna say what we can ask ChatGPT to show us where it is or how to get to it. What do you call that again?
Brilliant. Turbo 16. I believe it's called
How
16K.
to get
Um,
Turbo 16. Okay, so ask. I'm sorry, but I'm not familiar with the Turbo 16. Could you please provide? Where do you read it?
ask it how to use more tokens.
Okay, how to use more token.
And turbo feature. I'll do the same on my chat GPT. Let me see if I can get it.
Let's see. Get this to respond.
To access the turbo feature, you will need to subscribe to the appropriate pricing plan offered by OpenAI. The availability and details of the turbo feature may be subject to change, so it's best to refer to OpenAI documentation or official source for the most up-to-date documentation. So it's not maximum token is 4096 token right now, 3.5 token are chunks.
Hello? Hi, Boopy. Excuse me.
No.
I think I've overloaded my machine with too much stuff.
Yeah, go ahead.
You referenced character.ai. I'm looking at the page. It's not obvious to me what it actually does. What's the value of character.ai?
You can build character, you can use a character. For example, I was playing with a character about helping make decision. So decision-making character, you just click on it and it'll help you to make decision. So it asks you what the decision is. It give you a number of questions. You can click on it to the right and then you answer the question, it give you, okay, so it's very task specific. Instead you have to build a prompt. It basically like a, I don't know, guardrail, you kind of guide, more like, yeah, it's and I think you can also create characters like with your own material and all that stuff. So all the reason I've read is that it's the #1 AI company right now that it has the most popular and have them bringing the most revenue as this one, that they are like more like 10 times more than the next competition. So everybody's pouring their attention and money into this company. So it's worth looking into it.
Okay. Interesting. I know that a guy, a friend of mine, Fritz Kunz, who's actually the CEO of a Lisp company, has been doing something like this for about 20 years. He's letting people create their own characters.
Right.
But I'm curious then to see what he is doing in this space.
Yeah, I'll just see if I can find the news for you.
I assume they're still private.
Yes, he is trying to find something here. I keep track of whatever is the biggest shaker of the in the financial world, investment world, and all that stuff. I want to see who is on top, and I usually want to pay attention to the top 1 or 2 or 3.
Yeah. So are we at a stalled moment? Because if so, I want to go back to possibly correct or at least adjust what I view as a misinterpretation of a relationship that Barry and I have, if Barry is still there.
Yeah, I'm still here.
I actually don't understand the A versus B kind of perspective that you have placed on our engagement. I actually don't see that we're that much in disagreement. So I actually was surprised the last 2 times you've kind of voiced that. That
Well, I haven't
you
voiced it before because I tend to be pretty tolerant, but at some point I sort of run out of patience on the argument culture. And I'm kind of at the stage where, and same thing happened with Stacy. I ran out of patience with her too. There's a thing about being tolerant. I can tolerate so much, and then I go, this is, hiya.
Say hi. Barry said hi.
Hiya.
Are you watching Pac-Man?
Yeah.
Okay, go watch Pac-Man.
After you go around
Sorry
in
about that, I'll
circles,
just sneak
after you
out.
go around in circles a lot of times, and you're not as, it's okay to go around in circles if you're ascending. If you go around in circles and you're either not ascending or you're even descending, then it's a lost cause. And at some point you walk away. And I don't mind going around in circles as long as we're gaining ascension to common ground, but we're not getting to common ground. And that chagrins me. And I can live with so much chagrin. After a while, I'm going to throw up my hands and say, it's hopeless. I'm not going to live. I'm not going to live. The rate of convergence is longer than my lifetime. We're not going to get anywhere in my remaining 10 years on this planet.
Okay, thank you for that perspective. From my perspective, I actually think I've learned a great deal, and I think we've actually have covered a lot of ground, and I view that as constructive. So I'm actually a little bit surprised that you expressed some chagrin about that.
Well, it's the things that we don't agree on that seem to be persisting as going around the mulberry bush on it, well, it's not every week, but, never making any progress on the points that we are at loggerheads on.
Okay, well, if that's what you prefer, I can back off. I thought that, I was still inquisitive, curious, listening, and so that's what I was trying to bring. But if you feel that that's not been the case for you, then I can stop this line of curiosity.
That's the point about, instead of tearing down the old system, one of the 10 commandments is honor your father and your mother, but not just your biological parents. Honor the people who went before you, whose shoulders you're standing on. I stand on a lot of shoulders that date back all the way to the dawn of civilization. And I don't want to dishonor them because I'm building on their foundation. If I didn't have their foundation, I couldn't have been built on it. Okay. It's not that I'm operating at their foundation, but I honor the foundation that I used as a stepping stone to where I got to in the 21st century. And so it annoys me when people say, throw away your foundation. You throw away the foundation of the building, the upper stories are going to collapse. They're not going to stand without the foundation underneath them. And yes, they were pioneers. Okay, but you had to have the pioneers. Stop deprecating the bloody pioneers. Just because I don't repeat the practices of my parents doesn't mean that I disrespect them. I built on them. I took what I got from my mother, my father, and I ascended to a next level that I could get to above them.
So you may not believe me, but I have no disagreement with that position.
Yeah,
I try to do the same.
yeah, but that's what annoys me when people say, we have to tear down the foundation. No, we don't. We build on the foundation.
I don't think I've ever said that.
Well, that's my interpretation of what you've been saying. We have to throw away religion. It's bad. It's dangerous. It's in fact, we have to throw away the foundation that we built the civilization on. Well, then the civilization is going to collapse.
Yeah, I do say that we do have to level up. Yes.
Yes, we have to level up, but level up means you have to have a solid foundation underneath you. I don't live in the basement, but I have a basement. Okay. This is the second floor. Okay. The second floor wouldn't exist if I didn't have a first floor, which is where I, sleep and eat. Okay. And here I do more thinking on the second floor. All right. So
Can I try a metaphor on you, Barry?
Yeah.
Suppose we built a house on sticks. Okay. and that therefore we have a stick foundation, and then we have a room. And let's say now 20, 30 years later, or however many generations, we say, hey, this is a little bit rickety. Let's put a few bricks here and let's remove the sticks very carefully so that now we're on some bricks. Okay. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm not
You have to
saying,
go back and say, I mean, this is where you do analytic theology instead of narrative theology. Narrative theology is using the very loosey-goosey spoken language of English and Aramaic and Hebrew and Greek and whatever, Latin. You explain the foundation in a very childlike manner. Okay, but that doesn't mean that the foundation was childlike. It's just that it was explained in a childlike manner because you couldn't explain the concept except at a level that the then people could understand, and they wrote it down at that level. But you can go back and say, yes, I can shore it up. I can go back and give you a mathematical theorem that agrees with one of the teachings, where
Exactly.
so-and-so gave you a teaching and says, you know, take my word for it. I can now give you a provable theorem that agrees with it. It doesn't
Yes.
tear it down. It simply says, I can now give you evidence and analysis to support it.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with that. So we're not in disagreement about
Yeah.
that.
So it annoys me when people say we have to tear down religion. No, first of all, I make a distinction between theology and religion. And the difference I make is that theology literally means the word of God, and theomethy means the math of God. And in physics, we do the math of God. Okay. But most people don't grok math. So you don't do theomethy with people, you do theology because they only receive words, stories. We don't do math and stories. We can. There are stories in math, but they're not the way you teach math. You got to get down in the dirt and do the math. So I like to talk about theomethy, shore up the theology with some mathematics and some analysis, why we should believe it and not simply take the word of some authority figure that, you know, their teachings are sound. A lot of them, we do take their teachings as sound because that's the best we can do. And empirically, this seems to work. They live happier lives, and they don't get assassinated or jailed or whatever, you know, or starved to death, or get diseases. So,
Yep.
But for example, the kashrut, the dietary laws. The dietary laws were simply called a discipline. Don't mix milk and meat. But you can actually go back and give some good, solid, modern nutritional reasons and other reasons why the dietary laws make sense with modern understanding of science and nutrition. And one of the reasons, by the way, is very interesting, because in ancient times, people lived in a little dwelling, and the goats and the chickens were right outside the kitchen door, you know, right, like your ducks, okay? And the way they worded the kashrut law was very strange. It says, don't seethe the kid, the baby goat meat, in the mother's milk. Not don't mix milk and meat. Don't cook the baby goat's meat in the mother's milk, because the mother is right outside the kitchen door, and mother's milk is very aromatic. What happened? Well, what would happen to a mother goat if she could detect her own milk, olfactory detect her own milk, and her own kid being cooked in it? This is going to make the mother goat very anxious. Okay, and then when they're anxious, they're going to generate cortisol, and it's going to ruin the milk. When you kill an animal by shooting it, you get gamey meat, because it's got all kinds of hormones. It's got adrenaline and cortisol and all this stuff. They got excited at the time that you slaughtered. This is why in kashrut, when you kill the animal, you have to kill it in a way that it doesn't alarm it, so you don't get gamey meat. Now, it never says in the Old Testament, this is why we have these guidelines. But you can see that they make sense from somebody had the insight. Oxytocin in milk is very aromatic. It causes the bonding, and you don't want to upset the animals, because then you're not going to get good food, and they're going to be, you know, have spilkes and
So those are the bricks that are replacing the sticks that I'm talking
Right,
about.
exactly. And so you can see why it made sense. And also for dietary guidelines, it makes sense to vary your diet from one meal to the next. So it's also a discipline.
So at the risk of double clicking on this point, okay. If you train people to accept these guidelines without questioning the foundation, then you're growing a generation of blind, obedient
Yeah.
servant.
And that's why I want to go over it, not to discredit it or disparage it, but to understand the brilliance, the ingenuity in it, even though it wasn't explained in modern scientific language. And we also know that you didn't eat pork because in those days you didn't have refrigeration, and pork spoiled and you could get sick from it. Now today we have laws that make it much safer to eat pork and other products which spoil. So you don't have to say, well, I don't eat pork. But the point is it's a discipline. So if you say, well, I just want to obey the discipline because it's a good practice to be disciplined and there's no real harm. So sometimes some people obey the dietary laws out of just wanting to obey the discipline because it makes them pay attention.
Okay, I'll leave it there for now.
So I want to get to
Thank you for that, Woodbury. Thank you for listening and participating. And I'm hoping that we don't feel like we're at odds. I don't, certainly.
Well, it's when I get into arguments, I go, how the fuck do I get in these stupid arguments? We're not getting anywhere.
I haven't even viewed that you and I were in an argument.
Well, I call it loggerheads, which is not quite as strong as an argument. It's not a debate, because and the purpose of a debate is to win the argument with the audience if they're going to vote. That's why I wrote that Schadenfreude theater on the argument culture. That's a send up. It's a send up of the argument culture. And by the way, I got that from who wrote the book, The Argument Culture? Forgetting her name now. There's an academic, I think down in Virginia, who wrote the book on the argument culture.
I don't remember. But anyway, that's why, by the way, I never participated in the debate because to me, it looked like training people how to lie. Now that might be extreme, but that's why I didn't really like debate.
It's not because, well, Kurt Vonnegut wrote Cat's Cradle, which is a novel, but everything that Vonnegut wrote, he wrote in a fictionalized version, insights about the world. So he would tell the truth by pretending to lie. And in fact, the opening sentence of there's this book of Bokanenism. He makes up this fake religion called Bokanenism.
I read your Bokanenism thing, yes.
Yeah, and Bokanenism has a very cutesy way of saying, throw this book away. It's pure FOMA. FOMA is just baloney, right? Every truth in it is an intentional lie or something like that. So he's making fun of the fact that in order to tell the truth, you have to fib. Why? Because things were taboo. They were against the rules to say things. They were taboo, or people would simply take offense. So in order to tell the truth without hurting people's feelings or ruffling their feathers or having the authorities come down on you, you told fictional stories, fairy tales, which were the truth enrobed in fiction. It was a trick. It was a brilliant solution. Don't believe any of this. It's a total lie. He says that in the beginning of the book. This is all fiction. Don't believe a word of it. Throw it away. Why? Because he's going to tell you the truth. He's going to wrap it in a lie. He comes right out and says it. I'm going to tell you the truth because it's going to be a bunch of lies. Don't take it literally. Read between the lines and get the deeper truth. Brilliant. I wouldn't have thought of that, except that somebody thought of it and says, this is why we write literary fiction. And literary analysis is this discipline. It's like analytic theology. There's literary analysis, which says we're going to analyze a piece of fiction, a classical piece of fiction, to understand the underlying truth that's buried in it, that's encoded in it. And if you study the humanities, you're going to study literary analysis. This is it. It's the Trojan horse. The Trojan horse is the lie, and inside of it's the truth. And you got to, you intentionally write a Trojan horse, and then they swallow the Trojan horse, and then the Trojan horse falls apart. Now in comes the enlightenment. The insight is inside the Trojan horse. It's a clever trick. Now I never knew about it. I studied math and science and engineering. Never knew this trick. Josh was going to say that.
No, I think you're onto something in terms of communication and understanding. And one of the things that really sits with me is I don't care if what someone's telling me is the truth. I want to know if they're being true to themselves. And that's a quote from a famous poem. But I want to know if they're being true to themselves without betraying their own understanding of their reality, of their own soul, of who they are, and if they're willing to behold and bear witness so that they can grow as a human being. If they're stuck in one place and they're not growing, then inevitably you butt heads. But if they're able to say, this is my belief, I believe in it, I don't want to question someone's belief system. I don't want to tell them that, yes, you can eat pork now because refrigeration is really good and pork is not going to kill you. If you don't want to eat pork, don't eat pork. Like, to me, it's not so important if someone's doing something because they're a complete idiot and they were told something and they just believed it and did it. But does that sit right with them? And to me, that's the most important thing, is to communicate in a way that's honoring someone's belief system, even if it's asinine and stupid and makes no sense. If it's something that they truly believe in.
I like chicken soup with matzo balls in it. Why matzo balls? Because there's a sentimental value, because it's a symbolic food. In the Passover Seder, you eat a dozen symbolic foods. And it's not the food has, you're eating it for, because each food reminds you of a part of a story. So you take a piece of food and then you tell the story that food item represents symbolically, concretely, and then you eat it. Okay. And so it's not about the particular food, it's about how the food tells you the story. And by the way, Charles Dickens used the same trick. I have a person who I'm pretty sure is a distant cousin who taught English at Santa Rosa University College. And she gives a lecture, her last lecture, on Dickens. And it's all about all the episodes in Dickens where food's involved. And she talks about the symbology of the meal and the food. Why does he go to all this elaborate business of the food in this Dickens novels? Same idea. It's a way to create a concrete instance of something that symbolizes something abstract. The Passover Seder does it, and Dickens does it. Dickens wasn't Jewish. He used the same idea because it was a good idea to represent things symbolically. Food, and so when I eat a matzo ball soup, I know that, well, matzah is unleavened bread, and you crumble it up and you make matzo balls. And why all this trouble? Because it reminds you of your culture and the stories of your culture. That's not bad. I love gefilte fish. It's not good for you, but not gefilte fish. I love chopped liver. So all these foods, which my grandparents used to make, they were Jewish foods, and they remind me of my upbringing and my when I had parents and grandparents who were alive. It's a warm fuzzy.
Well, I think there's something to be said for the warm fuzzies, and there's something that helps it as a lubricant for communication and conversation in order to move forward. So to stop sometimes and just have a cup of tea. You know, the British do that all the time. They have high tea time, low tea time, all sorts of tea time. But those little things keep the energies moving. Like
Yeah.
Sam was saying, the energy exchange, keeping the energy moving sometimes is more important than making the energy right.
Right. And it's also important because those were convenience foods. Those are foods of necessity when things were in dire straits and you didn't have the luxury of a wonderful meal and you had to make do with something out of the ordinary. So they made matzah, which is unleavened bread, and they made gefilte fish, and they made all these things, borscht, you know, they made, because that's all they had. So they ate latkes. And so these, not only are these foods fabulous, they remind you of how you got through hard times, how your ancestors got through hard times. They made the best they could with what they had.
Yeah.
And here I am, you know, with this, making the best I can with, I'm taking the least valuable resources and making them as valuable as I can. Why? Because that's the culture I grew up in.
Yeah.
Don't throw it away and go out and spend your money on a Maserati. You know, take the old thing and make it work again. That's my culture. That ties me back to, you know, my great grandparents and grandparents.
What do you think, Sam?
I was thinking about just now, there was one thought came in my mind. So if we broadcast the recording of what we're talking about here, it will be a hit as well from the perspective of somebody curious of what four people will talk about and all that. So that's one thought came to my mind.
Yeah.
And the other thing that come to my mind is that basically, you know, when Sam and Barry talk about the conversation part, is that, remember we talked about people are stuck at ground zero. Guess what? When you are questioning the foundation, you are stuck at ground zero. And again, it's nothing wrong with it. It's wonderful that we are stuck, because that give us qualification to be a master in our communication, unless we're stuck in the foundation. So I keep repeating, 80% of our conversation must be on the fundamental levels. When we can only jump and it only lasts the first 3 seconds before we come back.
Yeah. But the nice thing about spending a lot of time at one level is that when you have the breakthrough, it's rare, it's an epiphany, it's a revelation, it's an insight, it's an aha. And so you have a quantum jump where the quantum is actually pretty sizable. And so practice, 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 and then you have the jump of mastery. And there's something to be said for that. I get an endorphin high when I make the jump. And the endorphin says, you finally got it right, record this. What you finally did it without a bunch of stupid mistakes. The endorphins will say, okay, take a snapshot of this so your brain will remember the thing that worked. And that's part of the way the brain works. It's got this, you know, if you do this slowly ascending, you don't get any endorphin rushes. You don't reach any goals that were challenging. And you don't have this endorphin high. And those, yeah. So when I took this computer apart and cooked the motherboard and reassembled it and it worked, I got an endorphin high. I could have just thrown it away or just limped along with a half working system, but no, I wanted to waste, quote unquote, waste a day to see if I get a breakthrough. Just that time I did. Got myself a breakthrough. Sam?
So I'm going to be a little bit pokey again. Maybe it's too late in the game to do that, but I'm going to try this. The engagement here in the last couple of sessions, I truly value. This forum has been criticized at odd times, multiple times throughout its 5 or 6 year histories, going on 6 years now. And people say, oh, it's a failure because so many people have come and left. I actually don't view that as a failure at all. I view that as time goes by, at least I am seeking and filtering for those with whom I can have these kinds of conversations. That to me is valuable. I'd rather have 1 or 2 people or 3 who can have these conversations rather than have 12 or 20 or 30 with apparent but shallow and non-well-grounded agreements.
The shallows.
I'd much prefer a deeper shared understanding, the way I think, or at least I am striving for, than to have even participation. Participation at a shallow level, to me, doesn't go very far. It gets a feel good, participation trophy, participation certificate kind of good feeling. But I know that that's not going to last. What is going to last are the deeper understandings that I'm trying to get with you, Barry, with Sam, with Josh, with others who are still in this game, in this conversation. So that's my way of saying thank you and appreciation. And to me, that's where I express a little bit of chagrin. If you think that it's been a bit more disagreeable to you, it's not been disagreeable to me. Over.
Well, it's useful to know that somebody's getting something out of it. By the way, another interesting difference between you and Jerry Mikulski, because you both are coheletes, you're both conveners of these Zoom sessions every week. And for you, the record is literally the recording and all that stuff that goes up on the website. And Jerry innovated something that I didn't really appreciate until quite recently, the Jerry's Brain thing. While he does put the videos up, the real takeaway is he's got the brain open, and I was on with him the other day, and he brought up my name on the brain, and he realized that the thing that I was talking about, the URL had expired. I said, oh yeah, Google Sites says revised and there's a brand new URL, and right on the spot he updated it. And I have to say, I admire the fact that Jerry has been recording his insights in this system called the brain, Google Jerry's Brain. And my expectation is he will have a better access to the record than you will have from trying to find some system that's going to pour through the recordings and pull it all out. That may happen, but I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime. I think Jerry ended up with a better solution. Not that your solution was wrong. Maybe the brain didn't exist when you began. I don't know, or you didn't know about it.
No, I didn't know about the brain.
Yeah. But he works very hard. He never shuts off his camera. He's listening all the time and taking notes in the brain all the time. And that means that what happens on Jerry's calls probably will survive and get out there. First of all, anybody can go to read Jerry's Brain anytime. And you can find stuff because it's fast search.
No, Jerry's done great work.
I got to find something from our recordings here. Good luck.
I've actually attended Jerry's retreat. So I've been there. I've been in his community since.
Yeah. I went to 2 of his retreats in the late 90s.
Decade or so.
Around 19, I don't remember, 98, 99. Went to a couple of retreats. Josh was going to say something.
From my perspective, I think Sam's intention is to open it up, but there's only so much bandwidth. I mean, from knowing you, Sam, for a long time, is the protocol in order to do the work of recording, transcribing, putting it into Google, into the Google Drive, and so on and so forth. That automation of that system and that shared work has yet to be done. So we haven't all shared that. And I think that needs to happen. That's why I'm still here is, I shared with Sam right from the beginning. He gave me the URL for globalchallengescollaboration.org. I put it to the server that I paid for, and it's still connected. We're still connected that way. I said I was going to take it down. I never took it down, but doing the work itself and sharing that work and automating that work and making it easier is why I'm still here, because I'm not going to leave until it becomes so easy for Sam to just click one button after the recording is done and it's shared to the whole world so everyone can grok it.
Yeah.
I'll let you know, Sam.
Yeah, so like at the end of this meeting, I'll have to wait for it to anneal the recording into the correct MP4 format. And then I have to figure out, Sam will have to tell me where to send it, where to upload it. It's going to be a manual operation.
Well, I'm here to help with that. I was waiting for the tools to be automated, and I think in 2023 we're in the most automated tool time in the history of computing.
I mean, so Jerry takes notes on Jerry's Brain. I take notes by writing blog posts or posts on Facebook. When I put everything together into a think piece, then the think piece goes out as an essay or something like that. That's my version of, that's Barry's brain. That's, Barry's recording. Sam was basically getting video recordings that I'm not sure how you would plumb them, because they're raw data. They're raw recordings. You don't get the bottom line.
I assume that at some point, some entity, probably artificial, would be able to go through it. That was my
hope and faith, and that's a religion. Hope and faith.
Oh, no. That was a projection based on understanding where the technology was going.
Yeah, but again, it's a prediction is based on that you believe the model. You have a model that you make a prediction on, and you have enough faith in the model to rely on it.
It's not faith.
Well, this is interesting because the word faith has two definitions in Hebrew. The English word faith, when you split it into Hebrew, you get two definitions. There's a word called emunah, which is faith that somebody will keep their promise, and faith that something that you believe as an axiom is sound. And they actually have two different words. So you put your full faith and trust in the government, so they're going to pay back their bonds, that they're going to keep their word. So the faith that somebody's going to keep their word is a different word, different use of the word faith for, I believe this theorem or this conjecture or this axiom, and this is going to hold true. It's not going to fall by the wayside. Those are two different things in Hebrew language. Josh has put his hand up.
Yeah, well, I have faith that Sam will at some point copy every single thing that was here and put it out to the open source where anyone can access it. And then we will have the arguments with all the past people that say, I don't want that in the open source. And then we get to argue with that, take it down. But at some point, I would like to, Sam, just make a copy of everything. And I think we have the technology to do that now. Let's make a copy. Let's put it to the open source. And then let's let that argument or that agreement pursue and invite everyone back into the conversation.
If you go to Sam's channel on YouTube, that's his channel's named after him, you'll see all the recordings. They're on his channel on YouTube, and anybody can, you don't have to subscribe to it. You can just go to his channel. It's not.
I did go to his channel and I pressed download and it didn't let me download it.
Because you didn't pay for it. If you have a premium payment, $19.99 a month, you can download any video you want.
I'm gonna show
I
you.
do pay. I pay for YouTube. Tell me how does that work, Sam?
So when you pay for the premium channel YouTube subscriber, you can there's a download button on the YouTube screen, on not on your iPhone, not on your iPad, but on your computer.
Right. So it lets me download it, but it downloads it into the application that is YouTube. It doesn't download it out of that application.
I thought there's a way that you can download it to your local. I mean, you can just Google it. I'm sure there's a way to download the thing. It's not that hard.
Yeah. Or there's also a way to just go to a Google Drive and say copy and paste to a public Google Drive.
I just installed a version of Peppermint Unix on this laptop that I cooked in the oven the other day. And I got the newest version of Peppermint, and it has an application that will record off a YouTube video. You could play a YouTube video. It's an application. It's not the browser. It will suck down and record on your hard drive a video off of YouTube. Yeah. I haven't played with it yet because it's on the next edition, which I haven't actually installed yet. I've got the live version of it. But
there's at least 3 or 4 programs out there, applications you can do that.
It's built into the newest version of Peppermint Linux. Comes with it. Although I don't think
Anyway, it's 10 o'clock. So unless we keep our time, there's an urgency of closure. There's no urgency to speak what we need to speak.
Sam, in the messenger chat, you need to give me instructions on what to do with the MP3 and the VTT or whatever it's called when it's ready.
Okay, I'll do that with you separately. Okay, Barry?
Well,
All
do it
right.
in the messenger. Don't do it orally because I can't record.
Got it.
in
Got
my
it.
head.
Okay, bye. Wonderful. Enjoy it.
Happy Father's Day.
All right. Thanks. Happy Father's Day to you all.
Same to
Yeah,
you.
happy
Cheers.
Father's Day.
Thank you.